Pen versus Laptop by Marc Wilson. There are good reasons we shouldn't write off paper and pens. Last year, I spent a couple of weeks convalescing on the couch. After finishing off some computer games and binging on a few psychologically themed TV shows, I discovered a new hobby: collecting vintage fountain pens. Idly browsing online auction sites, I saw a 100-year-old fountain pen unlike anything I remembered seeing as a kid. In the 70s, I had to show I was good enough with a pencil to be allowed to graduate to a fountain pen. No biros allowed, and I've still got the Parker I used throughout my high school years. This pen, though, was celluloid, one of the first and most beautiful plastics invented. So, I bought a few new pens and inks and stopped taking a laptop to meetings and went analog to take notes, write to-do lists, and make the occasional doodle. It felt really good and productive. I had spontaneously rediscovered something akin to a fad that hit headlines in 2019: bullet journaling, a system of arranging scheduling, reminders, to-do lists, brainstorming, and other organizational tasks into a single notebook. Although bullet journaling, or bujo for the pretentious, has a particular structure to it, that it purportedly part productivity enhancement and part mindfulness, we have been making marks on paper, wax or rocks for literally ages. However, with the availability of portable computers and tablets, longhand note-taking and classes or meetings decline. Ironically, it's this decline that has set the scene for the revival of pen and paper. The ubiquity of handwriting made it mundane, but now we can choose how we record our thoughts. As a result, the popularity of the fountain pen on its deathbed in the 90s has grown dramatically. The price range for fountain pens is much greater than for ballpoints or rollerballs. On the one hand, they can be status symbols. I dare you to look up the Fuga Nocturnus. But on the other, and I think this is part of the attraction, that range allows us to express our personalities in the ways that a mass-produced pen can't. If I'm feeling cheery, I might prefer to write with diamine pumpkin ink, but Pilot Kiri's same looks kind of like writing with a lead pencil, which feels more fitting for work. Consumer psychology says we buy things for a combination of the utility we write with the pen and the expressivity. The specific type of pen or car or cell phone case or whatever allows us to express something important about how we see ourselves. Maybe that we're rich enough to afford a stupidly expensive pen, or about our different moods through the color of the ink. I see this return to the past as a good thing. Our research suggests that it makes us more effective. In 2014, researchers Pam Mueller of Princeton University and Danny Oppenheimer of the University of California, Los Angeles, published a paper, "The Pen is Mightier Than the Keyboard," presenting the results of 3 studies. In the first study, participants were instructed to take verbatim notes of short lecture, either by hand or using a keyboard, before being tested on what they had learned. Both groups remembered the same amount of factual information, but those who used longhand performed significantly better on conceptual questions, the hard stuff. The second study was identical, except that participants weren't required to take verbatim notes. The results were the same. Finally, participants were again allocated randomly to keyboard or pen, but half of each group were allowed to study the notes before the test. In this experiment, handwriting with revision was supreme. To cut a long story short, if we have to create the letters that make up words and sentences, we process information more deeply than we do when we press a button representing a letter or symbol. And yet, my lecture halls are a sea of Apple logos. Why is this? Across all of the Mueller and Oppenheimer studies, the keyboard had one consistent advantage. People wrote more words. I wouldn't be surprised if keyboard users feel more productive as a result. I'm not saying a nice pen and ink will make those work meetings go more quickly, but they will make you feel better and more productive.